talk about them. Have a great day, folks. It's a great time to be alive. Let the fight continue. God love you all.
Well, those are some big shoes to fill when you have to follow both of these guys. My name is Mark Meckler, and I am co-founder and national coordinator for Tea Party Patriots. And unlike so many of you, I am not politically accomplished. I don't have legislative experience. I haven't spent my life studying policy. I'm just an American citizen. And that's really what I've done for my life. I've raised a family. I have 2 kids. I'm married. I live in a small town in Northern California. And over the last few years, I've gotten very frustrated and very depressed, probably like a lot of you. And I've watched where the country is going, and I'm nothing special. And I think that's what makes all of us special, is that we're Americans. We're all the same inside, and we all watch what's happening, and we're all watching this country slip away from us. We're watching liberty slip through our fingers. And I think a lot of us sat at home, if you're like me, yelling at the TV, sometimes if you agreed, yelling with the TV, and feeling like you were alone. And you know, you mentioned Catherine the Great, and she was saying, who are these crazy Americans? Well, Rick Santelli ignited something in this country, and since then I think a lot of people have been asking, who are these crazy Tea Partiers, right? And I think, you know, I know now as I look around this room, a lot of you are those crazy Tea Partiers. And I'm one of those crazy Tea Partiers. And your parents are those crazy Tea Partiers, your neighbors, your employers, your teachers. There's a vast majority of the people in this country that, even if they don't specifically identify with the Tea Party movie, they identify with the values of the Tea Party. The values of the Tea Party: fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, free markets. Every poll shows that the vast majority of Americans believe in those things. And you know, if you're facing somebody who is a leftist and you're trying to have this discussion with them and you ask them about the Tea Party, they're likely to start foaming at the mouth. And I don't recommend that that's the approach that you take. When you're dealing with people who you know oppose you philosophically, I recommend that you ask them 3 questions. And the first question is, you ask them, do you believe in fiscal responsibility? And if they need clarification, I just say, do you believe that you should keep writing checks when there's no money in your checkbook? And generally speaking, as long as they're older than maybe 17, they say, I believe in that, right? You shouldn't do that. And then I ask them, do you believe in the United States Constitution? Do you believe that is the primary law of the land? And generally speaking, unless you're dealing with somebody who is a Marxist, they'll say yes to that. Leftists will generally say yes to that. They might have a different interpretation of exactly what that means, but they will say yes, they believe in the Constitution. And finally, I ask them, do you believe in capitalism? And again, unless they're a Marxist, in which case you're out of luck, they're going to say, yeah, of course I believe in capitalism. And generally what I'll say to somebody who is a known leftist, I'll reach out my hand and I'll say, welcome to the Tea Party. And they panic and pull it back and gasp for air. But I do that because the bottom line is, we're Americans first, and we do have these things in common. And we do have an obligation to retake the country, and we are privileged because folks, average Americans all over the country, Tea Partiers now, stepped up to retake this country. And they did it because they no longer believed in government. They no longer believed that those who were elected to represent them actually represented them. We've had people say to us, we talk about taxation without representation being the basis for the Tea Party. People say, but you're represented. It's different than it was back then in the revolutionary times, because you vote for people and people go to Washington, people go to the state capitals, and they represent you. So you can't have taxation or a ruling class without representation. But the reality is, these folks are going to DC, they're going to the state capitals, we're putting them there, and then they're doing whatever they darn well please. They're doing it with regard to Obamacare. In the face of massive public opposition, they didn't care what the people wanted. That is not representative government. That is literally a tyranny. And the people who started the Tea Party movement, the people who first took to the streets, and every single individual who's taken to the streets since then, recognizes that this is tyranny. And this is not about left versus right. This is not about Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal. Those labels are outdated, and they are not applicable to our current times. The reality is this is a battle of the American citizen against a ruling elite. That's what we're facing. It's nothing less than a total battle of classes that have developed in this nation. And right now we have a minority of people who consider themselves actually openly and will speak to being the ruling class. And they refer to themselves in this way, and they act like a ruling class. They act in a way sometimes more tyrannical than what we were facing with England when the Americans declared independence. And this is the battle that we have joined. It is a battle to take back from the ruling class the rightful power that belongs to the American people at large. Do you guys agree with that? So that's what we're fighting for here. That is the impetus of the Tea Party movement. And you know, people ask you what the Tea Party is about. It really is a battle between the ruling class and the rest of the country. And that is the vast majority of the country. And we can have common ground with people literally on the far left and people on the far right, that this country has drifted far away from the people, where it belonged, where our founding fathers designed it to be. And we can fight in common cause with people across the political spectrum to bring the government back to the people. And interstate compacts, and most specifically starting with the healthcare compact, are an incredible way to do this. And the Tea Party, when we introduced this to a bunch of our coordinators a few weeks ago, we were in DC, we had about 200 coordinators from around the country. That's the largest gathering of Tea Party coordinators ever in history. We brought them here to DC to welcome the freshmen. We had an incredible event. One of the things that lit them up more than anything else was the idea of the healthcare compact. Why? Because the Tea Party movement is a states' rights movement at its base. They believe in local governance. The best government is the government when you can sit down with your representative, and if you don't like what's going on, you chew them out. And that's what you guys saw the Tea Party do that in August 2009, right? And so this idea of a compact which can bring governance back to the states is a powerful one. It resonates in the Tea Party. Again, because the Tea Party is a local movement first. It's not a national movement. We're a national organization. We never tell local organizations what to do. So this idea of bringing things home resonates. And up until now, the idea has been the 10th Amendment, right? You hear all these groups talking about the 10th Amendment, and we need to enforce the 10th Amendment. And I think that's a great idea. But that's a long-term approach, right? And it's a crapshoot at best. Really, you can go to the table and roll the dice. What happens in the Supreme Court? How long does it take you to get the right cases to the Supreme Court? Who's sitting on the court when those cases get there? How are those cases framed? And ultimately, what will those decisions be? And we're looking at decades at best to return the country to its rightful position, the rightful balance between the states and the federal government through the use of the 10th Amendment. So when those of us in the Tea Party started hearing about the use of interstate compacts to essentially do an end run around the 10th Amendment, we liked it. It sounded like a good idea to us. And so our coordinators at that meeting I think we even jumped the gun a little. We presented it to them at the meeting saying this is an idea that might work. And ever since then, I've been getting phone calls and emails every single day saying, when are we going to start pushing this? When are we going to see the model legislation? How can we get this done now? It's important philosophically, again, because it unites people across all these dividing lines. I want to tell you a little story about the Tea Party and something that is an example of how the Tea Party developed and how it does unite people from different areas, different philosophies. In California and obviously across the country, the EPA, we call it the eco-tyranny organization, right? We've got this problem with eco-tyranny. The government is imposing all these onerous environmental regulations on all these different industries. California is a great laboratory for the worst of all of that. And in California, we also have something called AB 32, which is the Global Warming Solutions Act, already in place. We're way ahead of you guys, right? Much further down the disaster highway. And in California, where I live in a little logging community. And loggers and ranchers and farmers, these are my friends. These are my people back at home. And I was sitting around one day in a little cafe in a back room where the local logging association has their meetings. And these are family logging operations, third-generation logging operations. This is all their families have ever known. They settled our area, a little town called Grass Valley, California. And they were all sitting around talking about how this was the last generation. And this was the end of logging in California. Right now,